You first need to open the video that is being streamed live. Look for the chat box on the side or bottom of the video player. This is where you can type your message. Click inside the chat box and use your keyboard to type out what you want to say. You can type words, use emojis, or even ask questions. Once you've typed your message, press the Enter key on your keyboard or click the Send button. Your comment will then appear in the chat for everyone watching the live stream to see. If you want to send another comment, just type it in the chat box again and press Enter or Send. Your new comment will show up below your previous one.
This is episode 163 on the Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast. Say early childhood, and it's one of those areas that has a larger degree of agreement in Jamaica. Frankly speaking, people will trot out all the platitudes. It's the foundation years. This is where character is formed. All children of that age group need a good start, and so on and on and on. And yet, frankly speaking, the early childhood sector is terribly under-resourced. Of course, there are in Jamaica a few world-class early childhood institutions, but frankly speaking, there are many places called schools that are in a dangerous and unsafe state. Many basic school teachers get wages close to the minimum wage. The level of training of the majority of teachers in basic schools now, which is a segment of the early childhood sector, those wages remain low and the teaching levels remain low. And then less than 10% of the institutions have met standards set by the ECC. So the foundation is shaky. Some argue that this whole thing needs to be shifted and consolidated into a few well-managed schools. That's the argument, for example, of Professor Disraeli Hutton. To help us navigate the issue of early childhood education and the structures for bringing change, we have with us today Chair of the ECC, Trisha Singh. We have our regular presenters, Winnie Brown and Desmond Richards. Viewers, we welcome your feedback. The procedure for texting your comments to us were outlined earlier. We'll try to take them during this live. You may also send by text, WhatsApp to 503-9995. That's 876-503-9995. Remember, we invite you to subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe. So let's say welcome to Mrs. Singh, who has that awesome portfolio and I suppose awesome power. She will tell us. She's the chairman of the Early Childhood Commission. She's live with us, but we're not going to be seeing her by her on video because of internet connectivity issues where she's working at. And that's a problem, in Jamaica, don't we? It's a problem in Jamaica. Okay, so welcome, Mrs. Singh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me on Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. Thank you to your listeners, to all yourselves, and I look forward to your questions. I begin by saying I will confirm that we have approximately 2,283 early childhood institutions in Jamaica. Of that amount of institutions, I can also confirm that we have approximately 319 that are certified. What we mean, they have attained all 12 legal operating standards. We have seen an increase in the amount of schools that have a permit to operate, and you do receive a permit to operate once we've inspected and we see that there's no risk to health or safety of a child. You received a permit to operate. I can also say to you a challenge that we continue to face in our beautiful country and the sector is that I still have 145 institutions that are deemed delinquent. And what do I mean by that? You have not applied to the Early Childhood Commission. And if you have not applied to us, then you're operating without being on our radar. And that's why we like to come on these podcasts. We like to share with Jamaicans before you enroll your child in a basic school, an early childhood institution, please ask the first question: do you have a permit to operate? And if they say they don't have a permit to operate, I recommend you not send your child to this institution. What I can share is we have been on a drive to what we call modernization of the early childhood sector, which is creating more infant departments and infant schools. Presently in Jamaica, we have approximately 484 infant department. And what that means, you're operated and fully funded by the government of Jamaica, and it's free. The truth is, we need to have an infant department at every primary school. And where there's no primary school and the need exists, we need to have an infant standalone, what we call a school. And that is part of the modernization, where as an institution like this, every child should be exposed to trained teacher. Your facility, which you speak about, Mr. Desmond, I hear it loud and clear, is the toilet facility, which is also child friendly. Remember now, in the early childhood sector, everything child friendly. I hear you talk about the challenges. Yes, we still have a bit of work to do, but I'm happy to share that we're moving in the right direction. As it pertains to the standards of our teachers, we are seeing an improvement in our teachers within the early childhood sector. Where we are moving to is that every institution in Jamaica should have a trained teacher. What's our focus coming up for this year? As you know, we have the Early Childhood PDI. It's a professional development institute that we have May of each year. And this year, our focus, high quality early childhood care and education, a child's right, not a service. So I join everyone in saying we have to improve the quality of the early childhood care that our children, care and education that our children are getting. And it's a child's right, not a service. So, having said that, I now open to our discussion.
Wow. Thank you. That was quite a bit. Quite a bit. I don't know where to start, but let me just start here by saying you said 145 institutions are deemed delinquent. So across Jamaica, roughly more than 2,000 base EC schools, early childhood institutions, are registered with you.
No, we are aware. They're not registered with us. We are, there is, yes, total of
28.
2,283. That's the
Yeah.
amount of early child institution, because we do have people or parents or just individuals who would share with us that there's an institution operating here. We do our best to get to you immediately, which I will openly admit to say that we do also have this challenge where the ratio of development officers to the amount of schools, I do actually need more DOs and I do need more EOs. But then that again is another cost to taxpayers.
So let me
So,
just ask you, because I know Winnie
Before you
wants to
go
come in
further,
from this
Franklin,
area.
before
Winnie
you
wants to
go
come in,
further,
and we have lots of
Franklin,
questions already. So
before
Winnie, you
you
want to
go,
just take those questions, clear them,
yes,
and then we
because
can
there are
answer.
questions regarding for
right.
clarification of what was already said. So before
Mhm.
we do that, we have good afternoon, a number of persons saying good afternoon, Maxine
Sure.
Graham, Nicholas Johnson. This is a question. Could you please clarify free education at the infant level? That's the first for
At the
clarification.
infant level, you're not to be
All right,
charged a
just
fee.
1 second, 1 second. EC, Commissioner, we're just getting rid of these questions because I see quite a few these comments, and then we come back to you. Want to
Sure.
do that?
Ooh.
When you hear the
Winnie?
word infant, that's a government school, and you're not supposed to pay a fee to go to primary and infant.
Oh man, hold on, we're coming back. We're coming back to you. Winnie, can you just clear off those? Can you see them? And we just clear off those.
Okay. I see them. Help me, Joshua. It's easier that way. Marcia Nemard Gordon says, what do you mean that free education at the infant department? That was the
We're
other
coming back to you again for that
question
answer.
related to that other one. And Joshua, yes. What is the ECC's role in addressing our country's literacy and numeracy issues? That's another question.
All right, so which would you like me to?
And
Okay, I'm listening.
All right, deal with the free education
you
part
choose.
first.
No, well, I'm dealing
You
with
choose.
explaining the infant. When
Yeah.
you look at the sector, and I want us to understand how the early childhood sector is, it's divided into three. You have what is known as private. When you hear the word prep, and sometime an institution that no government help goes there, you do not get a subsidy. No subsidy goes there. So parents have to pay school fee, tuition, whatever you want to call it. But parents have to pay. They fund it. Government does not help. The other part is the public-private, where the government gives a stipend, not a salary. So when you operate the early child institution, whether you started by the church or the need in the community by a lovely family, this institution is owned by the church, owned and operated by the church or the individual. The government gives a stipend and the government places a trained teacher once you have 40 and more children registered. So that's a public-private partnership that exists. And you do charge a fee. There is tuition that is applied because it's not a government-owned institution. Then when you hear the word infant, that institution is fully operated and funded by the government of Jamaica. So all the teachers, all the caregivers, the cook, well, I'm trying to change the word now to call them chef, right? They are paid by the government of Jamaica, and parents are not required to pay a fee.
And let me just jump in there again.
Sure.
And Winnie, when you are ready, you just go ahead with your questions and Desmond. But let me just
Okay.
jump in there again because I want to ask you this in particular. It's only 400 and odd, less than 500 infant schools, you say. So it's only about a quarter are government standard schools. Am I correct?
Correct. So you're saying that the
Okay.
government in the early childhood sector is operating at about 15 to 20%.
That's right. Now, are all of those government schools certified or reach your standard? that
All
you
right.
mentioned
What
earlier?
I can say is all government schools have applied for registration with us. They all have a permit to operate. Of that, I would say, I don't have the exact figure on me, but I think it's about 105. So of the 319 that I talk about that are certified, of that 319, easily 110 are government schools. So let me give you an example.
So hold on.
So go.
The first thing we need to make people understand is that less than a quarter of the government schools are meeting the standards of the Early Childhood Commission. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say meeting the standards. It's attaining all 12.
Yes. Whatever you have a standard to attain all.
We do have a standard, but let me
Right.
also help you put into perspective why.
No, but
I
hold
keep-
on a second. I just
Okay,
want to
go.
say you certify these schools on the
Correct.
basis when they have met all of these standards.
All 12.
All
And
12.
when outright, and,
All 12.
and of them that you have now, less than a quarter are meeting the standards. So less than a quarter of what should standard, government, resources, etc. Less than a quarter are meeting the standard. That's correct?
If we're looking at numbers, because numbers don't lie.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but
when you want to take some of
There's
those
a
questions,
question.
I'm coming back to you.
You know, I have a lot to say about these things, but I am saying what the listener, the viewers are saying. Nicholas Johnson is asking a question. What about lunch money at the infant school? Should lunch money
They
be
are
paid at the
provided.
infant school?
Giving your child a snack or a fruit in the bag, that is welcome. At the infant schools, we do give, just like with other public private school, you give what the government calls a subsidy, funding for food. There is.
Okay, so this is a question that you, should
So you're provided
there
with
be a
food.
fee?
You're provided with, the government is giving to institutions as well nutritional grants. Yes, schools in Jamaica are getting nutritional grants because the intent is for our children to have a nutritious meal.
Okay, so should the parents be asked to subsidize the meal? Should they pay anything? That's a question,
No, no,
really.
but if your child is going to an infant school, if your child is going to an infant school, and based on all that I have shared, then if schools are asking parents to subsidize or to add, then that is a conversation that institutions oftentimes have with parents. I am sharing with you what we provide, and what we provide is oftentimes enough if we are going to handle the funds properly.
Okay.
If we're
Mrs.
going to
Williams Singh,
handle the
Desmond, if you
funds
want to go,
properly.
because I'm jumping in possibly too much.
And
Desmond,
that's
we're
what I
not
want
hearing
to
you.
share
Okay, go
an
ahead.
idea
Yes.
of a
Go ahead,
school
Desmond.
that is certified new first primary and infant. And at this institution, it's a certified government school. And if you look at Middlesex Infant, for example, in St. Elizabeth, that is a certified government school. And at this institution, the chairs, everything is child friendly. The toilet facility, everything, the teachers are paid by the government. You get your nutrition grant, and you are expected to provide the children with nutritious meal. And you're
Okay, so Winnie's going to
expected.
take some more questions. This thing we're going to interrupt because we want to get the
What
viewers'
is
questions
Franklin?
because they complain.
Franklin, what is clear is that early childhood education in Jamaica is at the bottom. This as you mentioned in your opening remarks, early childhood education is supposed to be the number one education because this is where you are molding the youth. But the vast majority of early childhood schools are not registered. They are not supported by government. Government government is paying scant attention to early childhood education. Right? As I am associated with an early childhood school that is over 60 years old. And
How many children do you have at your school?
that school has right now it has about 30 children.
Okay, and that is something which let us have a conversation about. Having an institution with 30 children is not sustainable. Let me
Mm.
share with you why I say to you, no, let's look at numbers. Remember, I said it from before, where numbers matter. But however, what you don't want to do is displace these children. So the other question that I ask, is there a primary school which is also operating in this community or nearby? Are there
If there's a
other,
pri- is
yeah,
there,
are there other many
Desmond,
other,
you can hear?
there
are
of
there
course
many other, are
there's
there
a
many
there,
other in basic schools in the area?
there is a primary school there. Of course, with one of the things that is affecting the primary school right now is a downturn in attendance. The number of students there is way below capacity. So
So
if you
why are we
close,
not lobbying? So why are we not
so if
lobbying for this primary school? Hold on, help me, because I'm all about solutions. What about us lobbying where this primary school becomes primary and infant? So the children, the 30 children that are going to this basic school will transition and begin going to this primary school and it becomes wholesome. So it becomes whatever the name of the community. Help me. What's the name of the school? So it becomes primary and infant. Because we are seeing
Miss,
a decline in birth in
Miss, if
Jamaica,
the
you know.
ministry,
So
if the
Mrs.
ministry
Singh,
of,
may I go to the
Okay,
larger question?
All
if
right,
the
go ahead.
ministry of,
Go ahead, Winnie. Go ahead,
there's a
Winnie.
question
Desmond,
here
I'll come
from
back to you.
Marcia Nemard Gordon. The question is, that's not a question, it's a comment rather. Mrs. Singh needs to tell this platform how much funding is given to the infant school.
And I think
And
that's very
here,
important,
Rowena
Mrs. Singh.
says, before then, Rowena says,
Yeah.
infant schools are early childhood. Yes, lunch is not included in the no fee. You would make accommodation for lunch. That's a comment
So
from
are you
Rowena.
saying that this infant school does not get a nutritional grant?
No, I agree with the listener who says the question was not answered. And I can understand the skirting. That's why I don't say anything. It
No.
is clear. Yes, because the question is, should should the infant school be charging a fee, whatever is provided? That is clear. You stated that clearly. But the question is, should infant schools be charging a fee for lunch? That is a question that is being asked.
But you
Not
should
what is
not.
provided,
No,
but
but
is
you
it
should not.
okay?
No, but you should not be charging a fee because
Okay, that is what the
if the government is giving, and that's what I'm saying. Unfortunately, what I can share with you is that I did not walk with my accounting file to share with you the amount of funds, because let me share with you, when I tell you about infant, your money is coming directly from the Ministry of Education. Your funds come from the
Mrs. Singh, you
Ministry
are
of
discussing an
Education.
issue with
Hold
Desmond.
on, let me share something else again. No,
Okay,
because you see, I want
go
us
ahead.
to understand the sector, you know. So when you hear the word primary and infant, everything for you comes from the Ministry of Education. Well, we now have skills on it. When you're public-private partnership, the funds are disbursed through the Early Childhood Commission, where the Early Childhood Commission, that's why we had instilled a register. So if you are familiar with it, you'd know that our teachers have to sign a register, and you only get paid after that comes in, because we found ourselves in a situation, and the Auditor General did slap us, and we deserved it, where we had an overpayment of funds to practitioners, because guess what? They left the sector, did not notify us, and we were still paying them.
All right, Mrs.
So
Singh,
we
Mrs.
can't
Singh,
we have quite a
recoup
few.
that.
Mrs.
So
Singh,
what we
please
did,
allow
we
us to.
have a
We're going to
register.
move from that lunch question because it's eating up too much time and it's not as big as
Okay.
it might appear to be. But we want to take. We have quite a few comments we want to take, and then I want to come to that thing about the size of these schools and the number of these schools. So, Winnie, can you just take those few of those
All right, no
questions for
problem.
us and
Okay,
let's move on. Just go ahead.
the questions are still about the food. Marion Smith says, if parents are required to pay, it simply means that what the government is offering is a drop in the bucket, just like the salary subsidy. That is one comment. Another says, Myrna Jackson says, really, that school will now be taken away from the owner. And that is an issue that is on the table, but I won't go there just now.
No, but
Another
let's go
comment?
there.
Let her take
Not
the
just
comments,
now.
please.
Let me just take the comment.
Just take the comments, please.
Wilbert Stewart, basic. Can we please speak about the basic schools and how they cater to our over 80% of the nation's children, but their practitioners are so poorly compensated? That's what this person is asking. Marvin Hewitt says, does the government guide the infant schools as to what is defined as a nutritional meal?
All right,
And
I
I'm
saw a
happy
question
to
from
share.
Halima Jackson there, but Mrs. Singh, I just want to ask you this now.
Mhm.
The basic schools are the great majority of these schools.
That is
What
why.
quality of education is the quality of education in those schools, in the basic schools now? Is that something you can vouch for? And are you allowed to lock down schools that are deemed delinquent? And just for showing us some salary slips here, we're going to come back to that. But are you allowed to lock down schools deemed delinquent and basic schools that are badly operating? Well, just tell us about basic schools as they are now.
All right. By law, if there's a recommendation from the Early Childhood Commission to the Honorable Minister to close an institution because we're seeing threats to safety and health, we do have that right. So once we recommend based on the report to the Honorable Minister, she can actually have an institution be closed. I want us to go back to understanding we don't want to close basic school if there's a need. However, we need to recognize, are you sustainable? Are you giving value to the little ones? And you're not necessarily going to lose your job. Because the truth is, if you own a basic school and you only have 25 children in that school, and you are unable to continue to function, there's a primary school there, you could join that primary school. And yes, you may say, I'm losing an income, but an income from where? It's an income from the same taxpayers or burdening of parents.
But Mrs. Singh, aren't you going on the main issue? The main issue being that the government has not been able to provide schools at this level of a sufficient quality to get children into them. And the traditional system of somebody just setting up a little basic school is taking care, at least in a custodian way, of the children. Isn't that the issue? The issue being there are not enough
the issue that I want us to get is that as a nation, have we pivoted where how we started when I was going to a basic school? A lot has changed now. There are no more grandmas at home helping with the children. So what needs to be provided is proper spaces with highly trained persons. And this is where Jamaica has
we can't pay for that, Mrs. Singh. We're not paying for that. We are not paying for that.
No, but we are paying in the infant. We are. And we have made the commitment recently to find funds to start to pay trained teachers in the basic schools. However, you have to meet certain basic requirements. No, we cannot continue to say we're going to pay a fully trained teacher when you have 25 children in this institution, and right beside you is a government school, as you have rightfully said, that's, guess what, dwindling in numbers. So it's what I'm saying is having, the two can work, it's just how are we going to make it work? And this is the conversation. That's why we try not to use the same brush on all institutions. That's why we individualize all institutions. So, for example, maybe you're
before you go down that road, you mentioned the pay thing and the subsidy.
But the pay is a subsidy. No, but it's a subsidy. It's not a salary.
No, hold on a second. You mentioned a subsidy. In the basic schools now, how much does government provide for the subsidy for the teachers in the school?
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I think the subsidy is 20-something thousand. You see, I don't want to give wrong figure.
We're going to show you in a little while one of those.
But what I'm sharing with you, though, is that it's a subsidy. It's not a salary.
But hold on, Mrs. Singh. You can say subsidy a million times. The fact is that it is so inadequate because you know.
Yeah, but who
hold on, Mrs. Singh. You know that many of the schools are in areas where the parents cannot sometimes and do not pay any fees.
They have
all that the teacher can depend on is the $20,000 a month.
No, but you see, sometimes are you getting the truth? That's why I need us to not use the broad brush. Here where I'm going. If an institution has a trained teacher paid for by the government of Jamaica, they're paid the same as the trained teacher in infant. They get a salary. Where you get the subsidy is if you have a teacher there that at the end of the day have qualified, you give them a subsidy, but guess what? They are not employed to the government of Jamaica, they're employed to you who run the basic school.
No, I'm coming back to this. We can't pass over the subsidy, but
I hear
our
you.
viewers are sending
We
me
fight.
questions. So,
No,
hold
we
on. Our
fight
viewers
for
are
an
sending me
increase.
questions
We
to
fight.
Mrs. Singh, and we really want to take some of those questions.
All right, take some of those
So we'll ask
questions.
Winnie to
But
take some of the
I know.
questions. But
I
we're
know
coming
the
back to the
pain.
subsidy. We're not leaving the subsidy yet, Mrs. Singh. We're coming back to the subsidy. Joshua, can you help us with some of those questions that are coming in, please?
Okay, Marcia Nemard Gordon, the nutritional grant cannot, in block capitals, provide enough food for these children. Food is expensive. Marcia Nemard Gordon, yes. Marva Hewitt says in the UK, the government actually audit the schools to ensure the meals are nutritional. Is this the same process here? Another question. Yes, Nicholas Johnson says, can 150 provided institutions launch for? Can 150, I am, as it is written, I suppose the question is, can $150 provide nutritious
$50.
lunch for a child each day? I think that's a question. And Marion Smith says, we want to know why it is within a number of basic school practitioners are earning their degrees but are still poorly compensated. That's what
does that take
Marion
us back to
says.
the
And
It is.
Diane Bailey, if I mispronounce your name, Miss Bailey, your first name, yes, we are giving value for all the years, and the basic schools are important. The government cannot pay to rationalizing all basic schools.
We're not.
Let's face the facts. So the government cannot bring all of them together. I suppose that's it. And a comment, many trained teachers in the basic schools that are not paid by government. This one paid trained teacher in basic schools is obsolete in 2025. Shame on us, says Marcio.
Okay, Mrs. Singh,
And
your time now.
Scott
Then we can't
says,
take all of
but
them
Mrs.
now.
Singh,
all these
some
comments,
trained teachers in basic school, yes, that would have been the last
but
one.
this is what
Some
I'm saying.
teachers in basic schools are not being paid a salary. So please clarify this. So that's it.
So what
Okay,
I'm
Mrs.
saying,
Singh, go ahead.
all these comments are valid. I've heard them before, and I'm not going to continue to hear it until we create more infant school and infant departments in Jamaica. That's just facts. No emotions, it's just facts. And we have lobbied in the past and we have gotten an increase. Our minister recently has made the commitment, and I think the announcement was made that they are relooking, and the intent is to have minimum one trained teacher in all basic schools across Jamaica. And what that means is that the government is going to be paying for one trained teacher at all basic schools. So you're getting a salary. So that's not a
So
subsidy
that's
now.
that's what the viewer was saying, that is insufficient. But I wanted to look at the
No,
salary. Are you seeing the screen there, Mrs. Singh? That's the subsidy for one teacher, actual
that's a
teacher.
subsidy. That's a
Yes.
subsidy. It's not a
And
salary.
if the parents don't pay in that particular school, that's what the teacher gets.
But this is what
They're
I'm
getting
saying,
between
sir.
$18,000 and $25,000
But
a
sir,
month.
that's
A
what
month.
I'm saying to you. But this institution is privately owned. This is not owned by the government of Jamaica. That's why I'm saying I understand
but you are
the sector.
responsible for it, aren't you, Mrs. Singh?
Correct, and that's why I'm saying to you, we continue to lobby to ask for an increase in subsidy for the practitioners. We have lobbied. We recently got the approval. I think there should be an increase of 15%, but I don't want to speak ahead of myself. The other thing that we've lobbied for, and it is becoming a reality, and this is in partnership with Jamaica Teachers Association, the government is going to be providing 10 million towards scholarship for studying within the early childhood sector. And those details are being finalized now because, again, we have to help in terms of staffing is number one, which is critical. And if my staff is not good, then clearly my children are not going to be properly stimulated. So that's the focus of the scholarship program that is coming on pretty soon, that will be announced. And as I said, we
Mrs.
keep
Singh,
lobbying for more, but the salary is different from a subsidy. And where you have
Mrs.
a
Singh, I'm going to
trained,
beg I'm going to beg Winnie to come on in a little while
come
and
with it.
tell us her concerns about the this certification or the system.
No
If you
problem.
can
But I
tell
do
me.
understand, and that's why I'm saying that let us understand that when you are public private, you charge a fee.
No,
So
but I want to come to something else there. You keep mentioning that we need to go to more infant schools and government
yes,
would have
we
to make
do.
those decisions. Well,
Exactly.
hold on,
Because
Mrs. Singh.
Okay, there's a very
Let me just
important
ask the question.
question that has to be put in the mix, and that takes me in the direction that I really want
Go
to
ahead,
go.
Winnie.
My question says Dione Bailey, if I call your name right. My question is practitioners who are trained by the Heart NTA, if they are classified as persons with training?
yes,
And
they are. Level
and
one,
that's
level
where
two,
I
level
want to
four.
go.
They are. So when you get your level one, level two, level four, each time you improve on your qualification and you send that to us, your stipend is paid accordingly. Because as guest speaker there at a heart program, and that was one of the complaints from someone that was studying, that she's yet to receive it, and the only challenge is that she had not completed it. So I shared with her, you have to complete it. Once you complete, you send that information to the Early Childhood Commission, and likewise your subsidy will be adjusted.
Mrs. Singh,
You
you keep
notice
mentioning the thing about um, infant schools, but I'm asking you, isn't it something a good suggestion to merge more of those basic schools to have fewer institutions with greater numbers that you suggest are viable, where teachers could be better compensated, but have fewer institutions? Is that
Correct.
something that you have suggested
But
this is
that
or
is
a
something.
supported?
relevant.
But that
Sorry,
is
even before
something.
you answer, here's a relevant comment.
Mhm.
Lord help these practitioners who have been giving years of service and are waiting to be replaced. Help me to understand. Money will be made available for trained teachers, but nothing is in, therefore, for the practitioners who are now present
No,
doing the
it is
work.
the no, but it's the
Yeah.
practitioners that are going to apply. No, it's for those who are in the early childhood sector, and that is why I'm saying that this scholarship that is coming out, they're still fine tuning um, the parameters and how you actually qualify to get this scholarship. Because something that we are being made aware of is, for example, you can't not I can't just do say year one and year two, or say I'm only doing year three and year four, because if I'm only paying for year four, year three and four, how you going to pay for year one and two?
Yeah, but
So
that's Mr. Singh. But those details we can get to because right now it's
right,
just a
but all I'm
suggestion.
saying is
But I want to
everybody.
ask you about the schools themselves.
But I
Is
agree
it
with you.
better for us
I
to
but this is
consolidate some of those schools
yes,
that has been suggested?
but this is something which I've been advocating for since I've been chairman. The very first time that I spoke at a fundraiser, Pace Canada, right? I shared that Jamaica, we're operating with 400. We were at 300 and something when I was chairman, when I just first took care of chairman. By now we should have been at 600, but I do understand that that's a big cost, right? But this is where we need to go. And the government, we need to move from 20% in the sector to quickly 50%. And you will get to that when you, I don't like to use the word merge, because when persons hear the word merge and rationalize, you think of crunch and you're going to lose your job. No, I want to use the word
Well,
modernization instead.
I see Winnie saying no to the proposal. She doesn't like it.
No, I
Winnie,
know
what
you
you
may
don't
not
like about the
like it.
proposal?
No, it's not just like. Let me put this in context. It's not just like. There was an early childhood institution in my family from 1934. My family combined, we have over 200 years of service to education. So it's not just an opinion based on emotions that I have. I have many things to say. That's why I'm not saying much. I prefer the comments to come in and I speak to that, because that will take this in a different direction and we don't have time. So I prefer
Okay,
to just read the comments.
okay. Mrs. Singh, can you tell us now what is on the horizon for these um, early childhood institutions. Are we? Is there any effort right now to do anything for the basic schools, their structures, their teachers, anything right now?
Yes, there is. Since early last year, we have continued our drive to ask corporate Jamaica and every individual and past students to give back to early years. Because if we look at the schools that we brag about a lot, they have a very strong alma mater, right? So what we're saying is shift that. Instead of focusing on the high school, why not focus at the early years that have made you the person you are today? Because we all agree that the government can't do everything. We would love them to, but they can't. So we have been advocating for a shift of even corporate Jamaica, and those who like to give back go to early years. That's something that we have been on. The other thing, the
Yes.
PDI, the PDI that we started 3 years ago is to bring like minds together and to advocate for more in the early childhood sector. That's
Remind
fact.
us what the PDI is before we ask Winnie to take on some comments that's coming in right there. Remind us what you call
So
PDI, and I'm going to beg
the
Joshua to keep
Professional
comments so
Development
Winnie can take.
Institute. So the PDI that we have every
Okay,
year,
and we
the
come and you're having something in May,
it's
which
it's
we're going to talk about that before we
it's
come back.
the
Winnie, can you just
ECC.
take those comments for us?
Okay, Marcia Nemart Gordon, please, Joshua, back with that comment. Thank you. Yes, the only difference with basic school and infant school is that the infant school staff is paid a salary and the basic school teachers are paid a subsidy and should be backed with money from the school. That is an opinion. And Kyan Scott, what's the difference with paying us in the basic school versus infant school? That question was answered earlier. Halima Jackson, what is the increase that you already answered? Latoya Reeves says the minimum of one trained teacher in basic school has been around for a while. I yes. And Jackson says, why is it so difficult to get back the $3,000 we pay for police records each year?
But you're not supposed
Can you
to
answer
have
that
police
directly?
records anymore. No, but police records, that is something former Minister of Education, Ruel Reid, had announced that the government of Jamaica will take your police records. So you are not required
So
to
they
pay any
don't pay
police records.
anymore? Is that what you're saying?
The schools are not to pay, are not, you no longer take that cost. That cost is supposed to be taken by the government of Jamaica. So if you're still having that challenge, please send that to our attention, because that announcement was made and that is something that we lobbied for. You yourself talking, you the practitioners, because if you can recall, we have been coming around Jamaica, we've been meeting you at your doorstep. We're not sitting in Kingston not listening to you, and that is something that you all said, listen, this cost is too much, and that has been removed.
Mrs.
So if
Singh,
you're,
how many children we have in the early childhood sector now,
we have
going to
about
school regularly?
105,000 children in the early childhood sector.
Sorry, say it again.
We have about 105,000 children.
105,000 children. And what is it that we're spending on them now? I was
On,
trying to do it, look
you
it up
see,
through the budget, but
Franklin,
I
you should have.
couldn't do it
I'm
on.
sorry, I did not carry my folder with all our
Okay.
financing. But what I can say, which is still a fight, which I'm public to say this, our budget still reflects the budget presented by the government of Jamaica, the Ministry of Education, which is our parent ministry. As you know, early years is still getting about 6 or 7 or 8%. The majority
Okay,
of the budget is within primary, secondary,
I know,
and
but we will,
May, may I
my
just
next,
may
go
I
ahead,
just
Winnie.
ask a question for contextual purposes?
sure.
Grades 1 to 3 at the primary level, is that still recognized as early childhood?
Yes, it is, because the crossover, that is where we're seeing that we need to improve at, because the crossover for a child is 6 to 8. That's
Okay,
when you start going to grade 1, and that is where we have to pay close attention because remember, early years curriculum is play-based. And then when you
Okay,
enter
so
into primary,
so
that's when you're sitting and
It's
more
so sad we
instructional.
can't.
so
We're
when we
going to have to
talk
cut the
about,
show.
I'm sorry, the point I really wanted to make is that when we talk about early childhood education, it does not end with the basic schools and the infant schools and the private schools. At the primary level, grades 1 to 3, those grades are regarded as early childhood as well.
All right. There's a
Yeah.
conceptual and contextual questions Winnie is
Correct.
putting on the table, but we have run out of time. I'm so sorry.
We
I'll
need
come
to do
back.
it again.
Mrs.
We
Singh,
need to
we're
do
going
it
to
again.
bring you back,
We need to
especially
do
for
it
that
again.
PDI thing, which is next month. We really want
Next
to deal
month,
with it.
and
That, and we really
And I'd
appreciate
love to
your
have a
coming here and setting out
conversation
some of
with,
the issues. I have some texts here which are accusing us of not digging down into the salary part, but we try to go there. But it's such a big issue. Viewers
it is
will
because
come
you
back
know
to.
what? May I
That's
say
our
this?
show for this week. We remind you to share this podcast and subscribe if you have not done so as yet. Remember, you can use the same link to get to the recorded version of this podcast on YouTube at your own convenience. Thanks to our special guest, ECC Chair, Trisha Williams Singh. Thanks to regular presenters Desmond Richards and Winnie Anderson Brown. All of us had internet issues this time, including Mrs. Singh, who is at a particular place where didn't feel safe enough to go as well with the data and the picture. Thanks to regular presenter Desmond Richards, Winnie Anderson Brown, as you said, and to technical producer Joshua Black of Joshua Black Media
yes.
Services, and to you, our viewers. I'm Franklin McKnight. Until then.